Y'all ever heard of Rumiko Takahashi? If you click this video, I'll assume you have, but for the sake of video length, you know Ranma 1/2 or Inuyasha? Well, those were Rumiko. Her resume is extremely impressive, making some of the most influential pieces of manga and anime media ever. She definitely had a popularity peak in like the 80s and 90s. Most of her most recognizable stuff came out during that era. Like, do you understand how popular Ranma was in the 90s? It was Viz Media's cash cow. Guaranteed, if you pick up any VHS from the 90s, it'll probably have a Ranma ad on it. And I don't think I have to tell you how much staying power something like Inuyasha has. Or Urusei Yatsura, apparently. Not one I thought would withstand the test of time, not gonna lie. And while I have plenty of issues with her writing at times, I can't deny how unbearably charming her series are. Everyone has such a cute, funny, and lighthearted vibe to them. It really comes down to the characters. The characters are so infectious, they're so likable, and it really just all comes together. She really does make the quintessential rom-com series. But for every Ranma and Lum, there's a Mermaid Saga, or Rini? I didn't even know this one existed. And one other series that is one of my all-time favorites, Maison Ikkoku. Now, little prefacing with my history with her stuff. In like 2013, I started really getting into 80s and 90s anime media. I started trying to collect VHSs, I started reading old manga. I just really wanted to engulf myself in that era of Japanese media in general. And honestly, it was great. Little side tangent, but I genuinely feel 80s anime and manga is such a unique and specific era for that medium. And honestly, like every series has some kind of rabbit hole you can go down, so it's always fun. But yeah, I discovered Ramna, which I had remembered from an old Pokemon VHS I had growing up, and I fell in love with it. It transported me back to a time and place that, truthfully, I wasn't even really a part of, but that fuzzy, nostalgic feeling was still so prevalent. Can you have, like, secondhand nostalgia? I got really into the manga and subsequently looked into Rumiko's other works. I read and watched a decent amount of Urusei Yatsura, and didn't watch Inuyasha for some reason. It's on my list, but I'm not sure I'd like it, honestly. I'm not crazy about how Rumiko paces her shonen stuff, but that's like a whole other video topic. Anyways, this digging brought me to Maison Ikkoku, which I had actually literally never heard of, and one listen to the opening got me completely hooked. And at the time, it felt like such a gem. I swear, no one was talking about this series. For some context, the series had come out on Blu-ray, but it wasn't subbed on Blu-ray. So I extracted the subtitle data from the rips of the DVDs and used that in VLC on the Blu-ray versions. So each episode had slightly different timing I had to manually time. I did feel like a genius at the time for doing it, not gonna lie. I distinctly remember those Tumblr search results for the show were insanely barren. I'm talking like 15 posts. And I'm happy to say that I feel like the series has been getting a bit more attention over the years. I know they re-serialized the manga, and it's been coming out recently, which is really cool. I literally saw it at a bookstore, and I was like, whoa, Maison Ikkoku. But that's not enough. I need to gush about it and tell you why you should watch it. So here's a video of me gushing about it and why I feel Maison Ikkoku is so special. Maison Ikkoku is a time capsule, a series that truly wants to be a slice of life, a slice of 80s Japanese life. The series relishes in its gorgeous set pieces and its mood. There are so many shots that linger and pan around scenery, so many shots that just let you take in the environments of the 80s Japanese suburbs. In the 1980s, Japan had an insane economic boom. Employment was at a crazy high, technology was moving at an insane speed, property values were like skyrocketing. Japan felt as if they were like 10 steps ahead of the rest of the world. And I always feel like Japanese creators must have felt this too. So many series in the 80s loved these advancements. You see so many anime and manga relishing in Japanese life at the time, proud of their culture and their lifestyle. Even something like the popularity of mecha at the time could be stemmed from how fast and ferocious technology was moving. Maybe giant mechs in space didn't feel too off. And while Maison Ikkoku doesn't have mechs, it does have that charming, warm nostalgia of Japanese life from back then, while not making it more glamorous than it was. It's down to earth, it's quiet, it's quaint, and it's cozy. The plot centers around a kid named Godai. He's
I'm what you call a Ronin.
A Ronin is...
That is, I'm a student trying to study to get into the college of my choice.
Thanks, Godai, what he said. He lives in an apartment building called Maison Ikkoku. The other tenants at the apartment are very loud and very obnoxious, having no sense of personal space or consideration for Godai and his studies. Godai is sick of their shit, so he decides to move out. But right as he's walking out, a new apartment manager walks in, Kyoko Otonashi. He basically immediately falls in love with her, and decides to continue living at the apartment. Surprise. The series is what Rumiko does best, romantic comedy. It mainly revolves around Godai trying to pursue Kyoko, despite Godai being younger and feeling pretty inadequate. The romance is super cute and decently realistic, despite the more cartoony rom-com antics that Rumiko usually writes. But of course, this romance wouldn't matter at all if you didn't care about the characters. Godai, our protagonist, is a character I was pretty worried about when I started watching. The last male character protag Rumiko wrote before this was Ataru from Urusei Yatsura. And if you know anything from that series, Ataru kinda sucks. Godai comes off as kinda fake and really only interested in sleeping with Kyoko. He has some pretty shady and gross intentions at times too, but the thing about the series is, the characters develop. Godai is definitely written to be an idiotic young adult at first, being pretty irresponsible and self-centered, but you can see good nature in him, and as the series goes on and he has more opportunities to make a move on Kyoko, you can tell he genuinely loves her, despite whatever his horny brain says. He stops himself in quite a few circumstances, and while it's awkward to see your protag scheming ways to get into her room alone, I do appreciate the fact that Rumiko wants us to actually kind of respect him. And over the course of the series, which is the span of 6 years, he becomes extremely likable and charming. By the end, I feel like I fell in love with Godai more than Kyoko did, I swear. His character arc is really unique for a series like this, and seeing his progress of becoming an adult, going through school, looking for a job, etc. is really sweet, IMO. And of course, there's his crush, Kyoko. Again, like Godai, I was kind of worried about how Kyoko was written at first. On the opposite spectrum, I thought Kyoko was going to be a do-no-wrong, tragic girl character, but she really surprised me, and I ended up falling in love with her just like Godai, not gonna lie. You find out very shortly into the series that Kyoko is the daughter-in-law to the landlord, and his son, her husband, passed away a few years prior, and she is very much not over it. She's a very reserved character, not really opening up or confronting issues often, but that grief is seen so much in her character. You can tell part of her reservation is because of that grief. There's a good scene when Godai is shown pictures of her when she was still married to Soichiro, and he's taken back at how genuine her smile looks in the pictures. But of course, as the series goes on, she becomes friends with the tenants and opens up a lot more. You see little sides of her that make her so insanely charming. For example, despite being extremely formal and proper, she has almost completely disowned her mother and father for trying to force her to remarry and get over Soichiro. She sticks up for herself in these situations and comes off extremely confident and assertive. It's cool, and feels genuine. And one of my favorite elements of this rom-com is that she's part of the problem a lot of the time. The classic misunderstandings and miscommunications stem from her pettiness and selfishness sometimes. She's not perfect, and you see those sides of her as the series goes on, despite her starting out looking like the perfect girl for Godai. It honestly makes you completely see why Godai fell in love with her. She's a great character, and very cute, and very pretty to boot. And she has a dog. A very weird dog, but also a very cute dog. And not only her, but I was really surprised how much depth the tenants got throughout the series too. Most of them are very one-note gag characters at first, but they really want you to care about them, and kind of see them as this big family for Godai and Kyoko. They make a really good ensemble for sure. And even beyond them, there are some really charming side characters too. Mitaka, the rival character for Godai, who's rich and successful and very hot, he ends up having a really sweet friendship with Godai, and I'm a sucker for character arcs like that. There's Kozu, the tragic character who falls for Godai and mistakenly feels like they're dating throughout the series. Oh man, Kozu was such a great character. She's so cute, and I love the idea that you know she's going to be heartbroken by the end of the series. You're just like waiting for that band-aid to be ripped off. Interesting way to play with the viewer's emotions towards a character. A series like this needs to have good characters that you care about, because basically it lives and dies by them. And I think this series really succeeds at that. They also keep the cast relatively small, which I really appreciate. Like Ramna cough. But as I said earlier, this series is a time capsule, and its visuals and music might drive this point home the most. The visual direction in Maison Ikkoku is so good. The direction was definitely to try to invoke a mood of coziness and sort of a homey feel, you know, for the whole premise being about a home. The visuals aren't afraid to linger on a shot or pan establishing shots for a while. They want you to be engrossed in this little slice of life and consider and appreciate all the small beauty in it. The manga has a strong sense of that setting as well, but the anime definitely turns it up to 11. And the music as well. Oh man, the music. The music in this series is one of my favorite anime OSTs. It's so cozy, folky, even synthy. A lot of the songs in the OST are just songs that play in the background of indoor shots, as if it's playing over a radio or something. And of course, all those songs scream 80s. It's great. The OPs and endings are very, very good too. The second OP only plays in one episode, but please look it up. I can't play it on here because of copyright. I literally never in my life thought I'd hear Gilbert O'Sullivan sing an anime OP, but here we are, I guess. So I've seen a lot of series from the 80s and 90s in terms of anime, and while Maison Ikkoku isn't exactly consistent, budget was definitely stretched at times. It is one of my favorite looking animes of this era. You know those GIFs people always use when making vaporwave and future funk songs? Yeah, I'd say like 60% of them come from Maison Ikkoku. This series feels nostalgic. Despite not growing up in the 80s, it really does make you long for this era of life. The simplicity, the mundaneness of their lives, there's something to die for. And while it might sound like it, I can't stress this enough that it's not like weirdly romanticized. Especially through Godai, it definitely shows a lot of the harder elements of this era of Japan, and it kind of makes you appreciate and want to live in this era even more. It doesn't feel like this fake representation of it. It really does feel like a very genuine slice of 80s Japanese life. The series is about 100 episodes, and while I'd say that's kind of stretching a little long, I think this series does it well. The will they, won't they of the romance is fun, and the more mellow nature of the plot lends itself to be a little longer. No episode really feels like filler, but no episode feels like some definitive event either. It's all just a slice of their lives, and I appreciate every episode so much for that. The slice of life genre has been something I appreciated for so long before I watched this, but Maison Ikkoku really puts some context in why I love it so much. It doesn't need to grab your attention or have some kind of hook. It just needs to be a charming representation of the beauty of life, helps you remember why you wake up every morning. That simplicity and focus is, I think, why it stuck with me so much more than Rumiko's other series. Not to dog on it too much, but Ranma just had such a weird focus on antagonists and wacky action, it sort of lost its down-to-earthness that I felt with it so much in Chapter 1. And Yurusei Yatsura is just all wackiness. I don't know, that's a whole other beast. Maison Ikkoku will always be my favorite from her. I feel her writing style worked so incredibly well with this setting and style. I hope this maybe got you interested in this series. It's extremely special to me. As a creative piece of media, it's inspired me so much. And let me know if you're a fan of Maison Ikkoku as well, or plan on checking it out. I'd probably recommend the anime over the manga. I think the music and the visuals elevate it a lot, but the manga's great too. Also, don't watch the dub. The dub is pretty bad and old. Also, I hope you enjoyed this kind of different style of a video. A video about Maison Ikkoku has been on my bucket list since like 2014 when I watched it. I wanted to make sure it was structured in a way that got my point across. So please watch it, or read it. I don't care. Just consume it.